Hey guys, Dibs here. Just gonna do a quick video today, maybe have a little gameplay involved too, but the first thing I wanted to talk about is the new tanks, of course. Haven't done a video yet describing it. Just thought I'd start off with the RU-251. Definitely not the biggest offender of the most OP tank ever released. I do feel that maybe it's a little bit lower tier than it should be. But it's it's on like Hellcat levels of being overpowered. You've got people that really know how to abuse the tank's strengths, and they'll be the ones that are shooting you from the most ridiculous positions, and you're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe he's there." Um, you'll find a lot of stupid people that will just drive this around and try and like play it as a normal tank. Anybody who's good with the Hellcat is intrinsically going to be very good with this tank. One of the benefits is you start off with squash rounds. So, I mean, you got 102 millimeters of penetration no matter what. Very good rounds. Great for lightly armored targets. It's just going to wreck anything that has less than 100 millimeters of armor. Um, so your T-54 front plate, that'll go through that. Your a lot of Tigers. I mean, you're gonna have some pretty good penning on those Panthers. Um, but in the event that you need to, you also have access to heat fin stabilized with 320 millimeters at 90 or 277 at 60. So, I mean, this is going to go through anything. There's a lot of people complaining that the fragmentation on this one when it penetrates isn't that great. But then again, I mean, this is essentially the same 90 millimeter round that the M56 gets. Because you'll see here it's got the 90 millimeter BK90. And that kind of runs into the same issues too, but this has access to squash head rounds as well, which is nice. And the fact that it does have more armor than an M56 or which is kind of the closest thing to this tank, really, in terms of speed maneuverability wise. Um, and just the fact that it has that little bit of armor helps because you're not gonna die to random artillery shells that are within like 20 feet of you, and other crazy things like that, or someone just spamming like 7 millimeter machine guns at you. Just that little bit more protection goes a long ways. Um, it's pretty hard 50 cals to kill the RU-251. I mean, there are some spots where you can do some significant damage to it. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you just drive this thing like a Hellcat, you'll do very well. Frontal plate, pretty good for a light tank. That'll stop most of your normal SPAA you're gonna run into. If it's a Zeus 57, you're probably out of luck. But this thing's sitting at 7, that shouldn't happen frequently. Mantlet, I mean, yeah, all it's really gonna do is stop AA rounds. Because I mean, this thing is not built for any type of protection whatsoever. Really, it's just built for speed. Um, Back 8 millimeters. Yeah, but I mean, the main benefit of this tank is the ammo types it can carry, speed it has, and its maneuverability. I mean, this thing is just fast. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. Like M18 on steroids, pretty much, because um, it's just as fast as an M18, even a little bit faster. Better rounds, just pretty much better in every aspect than the M18. Which leads me to, battle rating 6.7. should this be facing like 8.0 tanks like the Leopard? It could definitely still hold its own fighting off against other 8.0 tanks, given the fact that it has access to heat pin stabilized and squash head. I mean, the big things that it would suffer against is, I guess, the Maus. I mean, fighting Russians, I guess, would be its biggest problem. Facing like maybe like T10Ms. The T62 shouldn't be that big of a problem because, well, that's a light tank anyways. Well, I guess not so light, but I mean, when you look at the, oh, that's not what I want. When you look at the armor layout of the T62, that front plate's 100 millimeters thick. So your squash head round should go through that. The other thing is, if you put a squash head round right below the turret there, that top deck is only 30 millimeters thick. So there's a good chance of you damaging, right? You know, if you hit that front turret, you can go right down through there. Just because there's enough explosive filler in that. And the other, I mean, of course, if you shoot at the sides or anything like that, it'll go right through rear of the turret. It's fine, pen-wise. Or plate's 100 millimeters. So, I mean, technically speaking, that squash round can go through. The heat fin stabilized, still wouldn't have a problem with it. So the tank is still competitive against 8.0 tanks. Now, the thing is you can't just look at from a picture of what it can fight against. This is like, what other tanks do its role? So if you look at Americans, you've got the thing that compares most to it would be like the M56 or the T92. So the T92 actually has some armor. So, but it's so little, it's almost negligible. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing as the RU. M56 has even less. T92 only has a 76 millimeter gun. Does have access to heat fin stabilized, no access to squash head rounds. So the RU has better ammunition, better gun. It's faster. It's more maneuverable because it's got a bigger horsepower engine. Really, another only benefit that the T92 has is it's a little bit lower profile, and the turret depression's actually pretty good on it. But other than that, RU wins in every regard. Would I much rather be driving an RU over a T92? Oh hell yeah, any day of the week. M56. You run into a lot of the same thing. There's absolutely no armor on this tank. Still slower than the RU. Has a good horsepower to weight ratio, but still not as good as the RU. I mean, the only reason why this thing's even remotely close is because it weighs absolutely nothing. 90 millimeter M54 cannon, very, very similar to what's on the RU, except that on this you don't get squash head rounds. You do have access to heat stabilized AP and normal American like AP rounds and APP BC, but still, it's just not as good as an RU, and you're sitting at 6.7 on those. And I mean, Super Hellcat like 6.3. So I would feel you should put the RU around the 7.0. At 7.0, it could still get top tier. It can still get down to 6. But I mean, at a 7.0 battle rating, or at a 6.7, that RU can technically be facing stuff like the T25, the M36, and it just completely outclasses those. I mean, it wouldn't even be funny. I'd be pissed if I had to face off against those at 5.7. It's just completely unnecessary. The tank is just a tad bit off of where it should be. That being said, it's nowhere near as bad as a Fender as the dreaded IS-6, which is got access to, your standard Russian 122 millimeter rounds with a little bit of a caveat. So you see here, you got you got 200, you got 207 there. what else? So if we go and compare that to IS-3, you'll see that 200, 207. So all the same rounds, except it doesn't have access to these D rounds, which are a little bit more penetration for value. So kind of a drawback there, but that 122 at 7, it's still usable. There's some heavy targets like a mouse or something like that. If you get up tier, that would be hard to fight against. But the big thing here with this thing is just the armor. The armor in this thing is just ridiculously trolly. Guns that should be going through it are having problems going through it. That front plate is only 100 millimeters thick, but it's sloped so well that most tanks shooting this, even though they should be able to go through, the round just disappears. I mean, it just bounces, it does weird things, and half the time it's not even worthwhile. The bottom plate, don't even think about it. That's even more trolly. Side armor's the same thing. The side armor, you'll shoot that sometimes thinking that, only 100 millimeters at 45, you'll go right through that. I've bounced off that I don't know how many times. It's just ridiculous. And when you start shooting down here, weird stuff happens. I've had shots get eaten by the track where it does no damage, and it's just completely crazy. And then you still have the 100 millimeters on the hull to have to worry about, which is even worse because you'll end up going through here, hitting the track, and then it doesn't go through the hull armor. Now, you can thread a shot usually just below the side skirts and into there. That starts getting hard. Then you obviously have to worry about road wheels and stuff like that. From the back, still just as well armored. I've shot this before. Yep, that bounce. I likes to bounce too for some unknown reason. If you can get a shot there, that's good. Just set it on fire, you'll mobilize it. It'll force him to either not repair and turn his turret around, or just succumb to fire extinguisher, and you'll have another shot lined up by then. Turret is god awful trolly too. It's supposed to be a weak spot shooting in between the optics there. More often than not, most of your shrapnel is going to get eaten by the magical optics this tank has. I have no idea why it likes to eat so much shrapnel. You can try and get through the machine gun port there. Good luck. The sides seems to be just as trolly. If you've got a really big gun, like a 128 pack or something like that, yeah, you can probably go through those a lot more reliable. But like I said, that optics port just super trolly, like unbelievable. It just makes me mad that you get something like the T29s and the T34s, which are known for a very strong mantlet, and their optics are just the hugest glaring weak spot. You shoot right through there, and like pretty much your turret's just done. Um, very, very good weak spot would be the commander's hatches. Most things, if you can get a frontal shot on that, especially if you have explosive filler, that'll do some work on the guys in the turret. So by all means, if you've got a clear shot at the commander's hatch, always a good idea. If you're shooting it from the side, you can try and hit commander's hatch. Depending upon your angle at the turret, that might work for you too. But if you can, we'll look at the ammo. The ammo in this guy, like a lot of Russian tanks, you've got some ammo racks right behind, like right next to the driver there. So that's always a good option to hit there. This ammo here, that you're gonna have to deal with the trolley side armor. And there is some back here that you can try and hit as well too. Obviously from the back, just shoot the engine. If you're shooting the back, just set them on fire. It's your best bet. But yeah, this thing, I mean, if you look at tiering wise, it is faster than an IS-3. It's got arguably a better armor layout than the IS-3. The turret's definitely a hell of a lot more trolly than the IS-3. And the only drawback is that it does not have access to one of the ammo types. that the IS-3 has with the slightly better penetration because of the post-war rounds. Um, that being said, what else does it compare to? I mean, armor layout wise, having shot at the IS-6 a lot, it seems to be as durable as something like an IS-4 in terms of like armor levels. Um, and I think just for that reason alone, having that tank at 7.0, it just feels way too low. I mean, the IS-6 is pretty much as I think top speed wise is pretty much about as fast as a T-44. Doesn't have the low speed maneuverability of it, but the thing is just it's bonkers. The IS-6, it needs to be tiered up. I would say it needs to be at least the same tier as the IS-3. End of story. It's pretty much same idea as the IS-3, but the IS-3 is 0.3 higher. Now, I know a lot of premium ones sometimes have a little bit lower battle rating, but the IS-6 is just being spammed so much right now. And I think that it's going to continue to be a problem. It's just going to be a tank that is always outclassing any other tank even anywhere in the range of 7.0 just because of its speed, mobility, and armor layout. Literally right now, if you play 6.7 Americans, you're always getting a 7.0 game just because of the prevalence of these tanks right now. And it's a little bit maddening. So I hope they can get that nailed down in the future.